Yep. Okay, we're good now.
We're live now.
Not live, but we're gonna be ready.
We're semi-live.
Yay! So not important.
When I add you to another board, when I add you to a new board, refresh, it's called social media. You'll see what I did. I linked it
I need a question now or
afterward.
okay.
You use this right here to grab the link to that. If you ever want to send me this, you just grab that link.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Okay, Dolphin, you should have a link to it.
Awesome.
Working?
Yep.
Yeah. Get her done.
And
Media?
here we go.
Social media post?
Go.
We're live.
Yep.
Hello.
Good morning, everybody. This is Abe Nadimi reporting from Abe Studios.
We'll see. It seems to change depending on how the day goes.
I'm very ambitious today, so,
Oh, okay.
so it's Abe Studios today.
Gotcha.
Awesome. Emily Francis.
Jannica Morton.
Coffee Lord.
I want to change my name.
What's your name going to be?
I don't know, something to do with coffee or chocolate or beaches.
Caramel?
Salted caramel.
Salted.
That sounds.
Yeah, I like that.
What happened to the caramel? That was the good part.
I don't think he emphasized salty.
Salty.
It's just
Salty AF.
Yeah.
Salty. So for anybody who is having to be paying attention to us today and joining us, thank you. Let us know about the audio. I've heard that the audio sometimes is low. So if you're at home and you're watching, or you're in your car or anywhere else, let us know if the audio is not working. So that said, we'll fire up because I know the audio works in here really well. So
Yeah,
it's kinda,
I mean, I can.
It's a little tricky. I don't know how this all works. So so today we're talking about support, and there's an interesting fact that Emily shared with me this morning, or reminded me of. Would you like to get into that, Emily?
Do you remember what it was?
Yes, I do.
Then why don't you tell it?
Today's a 100-year anniversary. This travesty that happened. I'm just joking.
God.
So for
All
some
hate
reason,
mail goes to Abe.
Yeah. Abe at
Jannica
thekineticexperience.com.
thekineticexperience.com.
No, Abe at Abe Studios.
I need to go grab Abe Studios. It's a really awesome name, so I'm pretty sure it's already taken. But I'll go
Probably.
try AbeStudios.com.
Probably yeah.
So 100 years ago, women in the United States got a right to vote. And I say United States because I don't know how different parts of the world,
They're way ahead of the game.
what they were voting, or were they already able to vote in certain parts of the world or not? I'm not sure. But in the United States, women got the right to vote in 1919. Isn't that crazy? So you're talking about the founding of the country happened
1776?
right, and the actual formation of the United States was like 1784 or something of that nature, right? Once the Revolutionary War was finished and all that stuff. And women did not get a right to vote for almost 140 years, something of that nature.
And
So that's even right through the whole through the Civil War.
oh yeah, after that. I mean, that was post World War I.
Yeah, it was right as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was what kind of spurned it.
Wait. When was World War One?
Yeah, it ended in 1919.
1914, 1918.
Yeah.
1918?
So really, a lot of it was
It was
men were
Yeah.
Okay.
men were away at war, and we were like, so we're stuck here handling everything, and can't actually do much of
Right.
anything while y'all are gone.
Wow. I didn't know.
So war changed the United States from a women's perspective and women's rights perspective, both the World War I and World War II.
Yeah. Well, I mean, go figure. You get all the men out of the way, and progress happens. The only people left behind are like, the elderly, weak and infirm, who you just like, shut up, grandpa, go
Kinda
back
true,
to
I'm
your.
not gonna lie. We're not.
I mean, literally, we're facing that right now. Our country is not operating because we have a bunch of old dudes that won't get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah.
Back in the good old days when people died when they were 60, progress was so much easier.
I think
not far
you
off.
mean 40s, what you're implying.
I think it's
It was-
interesting.
That's not
Fire
good
today.
either.
Like I really
have
think
no
it's
fucks to
interesting. That
give.
is like a whole thing
Mm-hmm.
where we have such a huge. They have experience. I'll give them that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, really great insight. Really amazing insight.
But also, there's a
No, they have amazing insights.
there's
There's a lot of life
Sometimes.
lessons
Right.
for a lot of people.
But
But
there's a key component that happens which I think is pretty indicative of for guys, which is at a certain point we can compartmentalize and not give a shit about anything. And I think that happens at a certain age where it's very easy for you to just do whatever is important for you. So like Mitch McConnell, at a certain point he was like, cool, I've achieved stuff. I don't have to care.
About
Right?
anything.
About anything. I would say similar to like Joe Biden. He was like, who cares if I go and run this weird opposition campaign with this black dude? Like, I don't have to care anymore. And then like he happened to win. Like, you see that all the time, and then people that try to do stuff get punished. Theresa May literally just resigned after trying to get Brexit to the finish line 5 times.
It's like, y'all said you wanted this.
And people were like, well, she did it the wrong way. And I was like, okay, yeah, but she was trying to do something as opposed to just sitting there and yelling about it for 3 years.
Wow. The
So-
whole system makes no sense.
Yes. But I would say generally.
Something doesn't
women
have to
tend
make
actually
sense for
do
people to
things
get on board and want to do it. I mean, skydiving exists. Sorry. It's super fun, but everyone's like, you know what I should do? I should jump out of this plane.
and possibly die.
You could walk outside and possibly die.
Well, yeah, but it's.
But that person
do
who
a lot
had
of
that
things
idea,
skydiving.
I know, that's what made
Right,
me
yeah.
think of that example. But like, think about like the first person to be like, you know what we should do today? I got this blanket in a backpack. What's the worst that could happen?
Okay, that's crazy.
I think the original was just like, I got this rope. Let's see what happens.
That's literally
Yeah.
every boy like, ooh, I got this roof on my house.
Larry did that. He took
God.
a sheet and jumped off the roof with the
Totally,
sheet.
I
and
did-
broke
I
his
did
leg.
the same
I did
thing.
it with a trash bag and on our roof.
Okay, I was trying
Long
to.
line of geniuses there.
I built a glider, so it was a lot less risky, but it still wasn't.
Still wasn't
that
none amount of
structurally sound.
risky. That's still 100% more roofs than I've jumped off of. Oh yeah, when Miles was
You
in
guys need to
college.
look into like flight testing, where it's like first step.
No, that's what we were doing.
That's-
So we built the
Yeah,
airplane.
I know that's what you
Yeah.
were doing. That was not what he was doing.
Oh, okay.
Right.
He's like, I'm going to use my human body as a test subject instead of be like, let me see
What's the worst that could
how
happen?
it's working with this brick, and then let's tie the dog to it. Let's something. It's like no, I'm
I would have tied my sister to
I'm
a
gonna
wave
throw
before
myself.
I tied my dog to it.
just gonna throw myself up there.
Sorry,
Let's just make
Lucy.
some stuff happen. Let's see what happens. Hey, what's the worst that can happen? Hold my beer.
Mm.
Hold my soda.
I just
For the
learned
young
that
people.
phrase this last year and it makes me laugh.
It's so funny, right?
So
Because you can
funny.
visualize it, right? Like,
Yeah.
hold on, here you go.
Hold my beer.
I think I've been to all of those parties.
I think to me, it's always the visualization of like seeing that moment. Like, hold on,
Yeah.
You thought that was dumb.
Or the women taking off their earrings,
Well, that's usually for a fight.
That was my friend Thomas. He hasn't been in yet, but I did that live event with him.
Oh yeah.
He's from Africa, and his jokes are always like the African women will start taking off the earrings when things are serious.
Oh jeez.
Yeah.
I've never seen that.
Sounds about right.
Mm-hmm.
And your shoes. When your shoes and your earrings
Yes,
come off, then it's
exactly.
time to just be
Yeah.
like,
earrings,
"Ah."
shoes, and then it's time to get going.
Because that's unencumbering. Now I can-
Emily is the loudest. I can barely hear Steven, and I'm in between. So
I may have scooched it back from you though too, Steven.
I mean, also
we're talking audio.
we're all talking over each other.
Well, stop talking over me.
What else is new?
Emily's the loudest voice in the room. Thank you, Teen. That's kind of what it's like over here.
Yours is
actually.
also pointed at your neck. It is not pointed up at your head, so that could
Oh,
be
that's
part
a
of it.
problem.
Ah, yeah, that'll do it.
Mine's aimed up to Jesus, so my voice will come from on high and spread to the people.
All right, we have a 20-second delay, but if we can get another sound check from TNG.
Yeah. So we have established that this is the anniversary of women being able to vote.
Yes, sir.
And then, according to, what is it?
The internet.
The internet's over here.
The internet's over here.
Basically, it was between 1913 and 1928 that most of the major countries had resolutions that were passed that allowed women to vote.
I remember when it happened on Downton Abbey, and it was before the U.S. So, yeah.
So do you have a list of like who was like 1913?
Actually, sorry.
Saudi Arabia was in that list, right?
1906 was Finland, followed by Norway in 1913, right before the World
Look
War
at
kicked
Finland,
off.
man. Talk about progressive.
They're
That's why we
always.
need to leave.
Denmark,
It's cold.
Denmark and Iceland in 1915. I don't say where England was, but England was before the United States.
I think that's when the answer was like, okay, fine, if they're gonna do it.
But yeah.
Wait, this
It's very interesting, right? Finland is like so progressive, even in their schooling systems.
Well, it's winter most of the time, so they have nothing else to do but like sit inside and have to get along with each other. So they're like, we should not do piss off anyone.
No.
Yeah.
They were still monarchies before.
But there's quite a lot of there's quite a lot of difference there because of the platform that the country is based on. So, like you know how we have the whole social programs that need to do specific tasks, but right now a lot of them are underfunded, and a lot of people are like, well, we should be like Denmark and Finland. Well, the issue with being like Denmark and Finland is the taxes that are pulled in by the government to fund most of those things, but it's because everyone's super comfortable there because they came down from high taxation to the point they're at. We went way below, and then people want to push it up, and it's much harder to tell people, okay, we need you to pay a little bit more than saying, hey, you get to pay less, but we're going to do more for you.
The taxes in this country will never be solved until another civil war happens. Just not going to happen. Like, it's going to go to total blows because one
I'm
side
hoping
is
for
like,
more of like a French Revolution standpoint. Like, I feel like that would be a lot more fun.
Yeah.
My head's not getting chopped off. I'm
French
saying.
Revolution? Well, that's a civil war. What I mean is that they're the two totally different sides to the argument. One of them is we don't have enough money to pay for basic services.
Right.
And the other side's like, but you waste so much fucking money. You want to just get more money. These sides will never ever converge on each other.
Right.
And they both have valid points because one of them states this is fact, the road is full of potholes or whatever, and the other side's like, yeah, but we have a $48 million bridge that doesn't work yet. So right, I think it's California spent $750 million on a subway line that hasn't, like, it's completely over budget and delayed. So it's like $750 million.
And
oh my God, it's almost $1 billion.
Well, it's $1 billion a mile, and they actually ran a study about the infrastructure here in the United States, and they said we spend 45% more on all of our infrastructure projects than anybody else in the world.
45% more.
Yeah. So essentially, for every mile of high-speed rail in Japan or in Europe, they spend on average $300,000 to $400,000 per mile. We spend $1.5 billion. And that's across the country.
Hold on. Can you crank down Emily's volume just a tad bit?
I'm number 3.
She's number 3, or her game. All right, so we're gonna try this new one. And is there not a setting that we just overall, because Tangi's like literally on max on her phone. She goes, I can hear everybody clearly. Emily's the loudest.
I've got it on like 15. It's basically right at the line of it will be in red. So
Let's see if this fix does it.
All right, let's see.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that though. What she's saying is, so she's on max volume.
Right.
And she goes, Emily's the only one that is too loud for max volume. Everybody else sounds good at max. But shouldn't we not have to be on max when someone's watching this?
Well, for phones, it's gonna, because that's more the speaker on the phone driving the volume than on our side. But Emily, being at a higher level than us, would do it.
Okay, so we'll try this now.
Yeah, because it's too. Yeah,
So what do you think? Like, we're totally off topic on support, but what's the infrastructure? I think the whole system that we have.
Hey, I want to be supported by the road I'm driving on, so we're going to tie that
We're
together.
gonna keep on going. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Where's the complete inefficiency in our system? Is it because our system is actually designed to be inefficient on purpose? Because there's campaign. I never would have thought this.
Right.
That a big campaign issue is jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Which to me, it's like, but you could. In Iran, I remember this very specifically. I went to a rec center, right?
Right.
And like a city rec center, so it's a government-owned building kind of thing, right?
Right. Right.
And so you'd walk in, and we went and we bought a ticket, okay? And then we got to go to somewhere else to deposit our shoes, and then you got to go somewhere else to just give the guy the ticket. And you're like, this is like one step in the States, like literally one step, right? Like money, ticket, shoes, done.
Yeah.
But over there, it's like, yeah, but they make jobs like this so they can pay people. And so they literally bake in inefficiencies because that's the way to transfer money without just literally giving a check.
So we have something similar that's going on, but it's going on in the macro, not the micro. So most politicians are mostly rewarded for being active and trying to improve the community, right? Mm-hmm. And
of course.
In most of those cases, the amount of money spent on the project doesn't matter as much as the activity of getting the project done if it generally will benefit the city. Mm-hmm. So for instance, expanding the dart rail. That is something that generally benefit the city, but there's all the studies that need to be run and all the infrastructure pieces and all the other things that have to be done, but most of that is done very inefficiently because when the person running it has a political and an economic incentive to keep that process going so that they can show that they're still working for the people that voted for them, then what tends to happen is that the people that will get the work done the way they want to for their maximum gain happen to be their friends. And then the padding starts. So basically, for every contract that gets won by someone in the city, there's some councilman or someone that's attached to it, which then there's some inflation that goes on. Those little steps they just inflate the price.
Or on the flip side, you've got people will try and underbid to win the bid, but like you cannot complete the job for what you said you was. Now the city or whoever is paid out for a contractor
who's going to mess it up,
not going to finish,
and then they have to hire someone else who comes in with a different bid to then fix that problem, which then happens to swing politics the other direction. So our bridge is a perfect example of that. The bridge was supposed to cost $327 million.
Which one?
any of them.
The ones over 30.
Okay.
Right, because they finished the big one, and then they're like, okay, now we're gonna do the second ones. The whole plan was there were supposed to be 7 bridges, like all of the old bridges were supposed to be replaced with these new shiny white.
Okay.
The bridges of
arch
Dallas
bridges.
County.
So this first bid goes in and they build it, but someone convinced them to build it under budget, and the way they got it under budget was just not putting in supports necessary to make the bridge functional. So those arches are not attached to the highway. They cannot be attached to the highway, and they're already cracking. It's going to cost another $77 million to fix them, bringing the total back to where it was originally priced at.
At what point do we execute people for being dead dumb?
In America,
Because in
we
China
can't.
they do, like
Right.
legit.
But that's because
French
we
Revolution.
have freedom, whereas China says you don't have freedom. We tell you what you need to do.
But
So-
the freedom to rob a community of
Yes.
$77 million.
That's capitalism, baby.
Yeah.
That's not capitalism.
Sure
That's
it
how it
is.
operates
That
in the
has nothing to
United
do with
States.
capitalism.
That's
That's just
exactly how it
fraud.
operates.
No, that's capitalism. Maximizing the monetary return for the people that you are responsible to, whether it's fiduciary or political.
Right, but technically they're going to be hit with a lawsuit. As
No.
soon as the time goes on, because you have a liability to
No,
it. Like
they-
my house is under a 10-year warranty.
Abe, they won't, because they did everything in their power to try to get it done the right way. That is the loophole that you slide through. As long as you attempted to get it done the right way, you can't be sued for it.
Yeah, but again, it's horseshit.
I know it's horseshit. You know it's horseshit. A lot of other people
There's a
know
lot
it's
of
horseshit.
capitalism going around in China nowadays, and they're getting this guy.
But
And in Iran too, by the way, this guy embezzled like I don't even know, like
Right,
ton
right,
of dough, like 100
right.
million or a billion or something, right? And they're like, you really damaged these people. You've damaged whole communities. We're gonna hang you up by this crane, and the guy's dead, like literally,
right.
for stealing.
I'm not mad about
But
it.
then
Basically, what happened in the United States in 2008
Mhm.
in Iran, they said like, no, we're gonna play the game.
Yeah, but if we
We're
did
gonna
that
play
here,
the
we
game.
wouldn't have a president now.
We wouldn't have a president. We wouldn't have a bunch of presidents. We wouldn't have
Yeah.
any of the heads of any of the banks.
Any
None
of
of
the secretaries that he's appointed.
But that's the whole thing. Like, freedom allows you to do stuff, and
You're free to be a
that-
horrible person,
they're not
too.
always good. It's not always good stuff.
Yeah.
So
But the freedom up to the point that we damage other people, that's where the freedom ends. That's where we have laws.
I
It's
mean-
literally the purpose of laws.
I mean,
to define that boundary between what I can do and what you can do.
right, but there are certain people that they're very happy in the fiction that freedom should be absolute.
Yeah, nobody does that.
I mean, there's a lot of libertarians I know that are like, yeah, freedom is great for everything, and then when you, like, if you really drill down into it, they actually are pretty okay with some things not being free.
But the whole point
that might
the
actually
whole
affect
point is
them
that
directly.
if there is going to be a law,
Right.
it should coincide with the Constitution. And if the Constitution needs to be amended, we need to amend it. It's not that complicated.
Yeah,
It's
I
super
mean,
simple.
we're learning
modifying
a
the
lot of that now.
Constitution is very difficult.
Yes.
But the whole point is that those were the things that should have been put in the
Which-
Constitution.
Which, coming back to the topic we're starting with, support and suffrage and women being able to vote, that was a process of amending the Constitution to fix something that hadn't been put in originally. And I think we're going through that right now in
Well,
this
hold on
country
a
where
second.
people are like, wait a minute, is this a real law or is this something that we've just always done?
100%. Yeah, so that's the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Women not allowed to vote was purely
Something
their
that people just-
interpretation
Yes.
of what.
No, I feel like it was pretty straightforward since women were property when the country was founded. So, literally, why would you give people who are. I wouldn't give my sofa the right to vote.
Yeah. I mean, it was in, like, the original version of the Constitution said white landowning male. That's
So,
who
not
got to
even
vote.
just white men. It
White
was
men
White
in the Constitution?
land-owning.
land
male.
owning.
Was the only people that had a right
That's
to
the
vote?
only people
Yes.
that could vote.
That was very specifically stated in there. So, it wasn't just like, oh,
Well, then that's a valid
if you're
point.
poor,
then.
they don't want poor people
Well, let's say
having
that
to
this
vote.
is a valid point. This is exactly why the
Right.
amendment was so valuable.
Right, but it was process amendments. What I was
Well, then
saying.
it was like, oh, I guess we should I guess black people can vote now.
Right. So first it was
But
white,
I don't see
white
anything wrong with
landmen
that
and men.
system because
Which part of the system?
the evolution of the thought processes.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like a lot.
I'm
of
not
people,
saying right. There's a lot of laws right now that we think are okay.
that in
Then in 20 years we're like, why the fuck did we even have that
Yes.
stupid law? But we
Yes.
don't, right? Like as a people, we have to evolve, and not just a progressive 2%.
Right.
But the other people have to also come along to finally get to this point.
But that's
And
the.
so the law said white land-owning males,
And then they said.
and after a
males.
while,
They
huh?
said then they said anyone that was a guy, as long like white men.
But hold on a second. Now
Yeah.
here's the question:
Right.
Did they amend the Constitution to do that, or did they just kind of allow that
I
skate on
believe
by?
they clarified it.
No, yeah,
in-
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if there was an amendment when they expanded it to all men.
And a lot of times there's not. And so well, Dobie is like, yeah, we don't really like that Constitution thing, so we'll just kind of start doing our own thing.
Right.
And I'm all like, no, go fix the Constitution.
That's true. Because they did have to fix the Constitution when they allowed black people to vote, but it wasn't all black people. It was black men. So then you have this, and then suffrage had to happen for everyone to get the right to vote, and then now we're dealing with everyone has the right to vote, but now we
Like-
figured out how to make the votes not count as much.
Well, I'm all about, see, I'm all, I,
1856, white men were allowed to vote in all states, regardless of property ownership.
okay, hold on, how
Yeah.
did that happen though?
And then the 26th Amendment in 1971 is
Yeah.
where they, I guess, actually clarified.
Can
all
you
of
go
those
back to when
statements.
white men could vote
So
regardless
1856
of
was
land?
just like an option they added. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so-
how though? You're not answering my question.
No,
I'm reading it
saying,
right
like they
now.
didn't do an amendment. They didn't do the amendment until the 27th Amendment to
Oh.
actually clarify. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the bullshit part of the,
Right.
I think, in the libertarian side
They
would
probably
say
did
like,
that
why
when they
did we do
realized, like, oh,
that?
I guess we should probably make sure now that we're going to let black
Well, no,
people take away some.
the libertarians don't care.
Yeah.
No, what I mean is like, you have to modify the Constitution.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Right.
So in my HOA, little mini 55 home country,
Mm-hmm.
right? The conversation comes up about like, you told me you can't do this. Like, hold on. I got here. There's a Constitution.
Right.
You can modify the Constitution. Super easy. It needs 2/3 of the houses to vote on adopting a modification, and we can modify the whole thing. If you want to have pink polka dotted driveways, no problem. Just put it in the document.
Right.
It's so easy. But don't just decide, no, we're not going to enforce this rule, but we are going to enforce this one. Stephen cannot park outside of the parking lane. But I can change the door color to whatever I want. Like, that's not fair.
That's exactly where we are right now. We've done so many of these agreements inside of our government structure that when you look at the actual rules versus what actually happens, it's so night and day that people are like, wait, why do we have issues about immigration? Well, because no one actually fixed immigration. Like, no one put real rules in place. They were just like, oh, we kind of think it works this way. And the last time it was like in the 60s when they made the last change. And then it's just kind of run by inertia.
Right. You want to know how you can know how complicated it is? Look at any of look at any executive order of any time.
Yeah.
Especially in the last 20 years or so.
Yeah.
And the executive order will then cite 19 different laws and 48 different passages as to where the authority comes to do blank.
Yep.
You're like, holy smokes! How many fucking laws do you guys create?
It's like a giant game of Jenga.
100%.
It's like,
So
oh,
under
we're gonna
the
move this
authority
piece,
of the
stick this here.
1976 Free Trade Act, Section 2.2.2221,
Yeah. Right.
but also coinciding with the NAFTA agreement, over here, and then this one, and then that one, and then starts off with the Constitution, like, this clause in the Constitution, and then modified on a.
Which is
Well,
one
the
of the
15th Amendment is the one where essentially
everyone.
everyone, and
Yeah.
males.
All males could vote.
Yes.
Right.
On the 15th Amendment, what year was that?
It was actually ratified 1870, but it looks like kind of was bouncing around as early as 1968, or sorry, 1868.
So let's get this right. 1856, white males could vote regardless of land, but that was not put into the Constitution. That was just like some gentleman's agreement
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, but just to make sure, like, okay, as long as you're not black, you can vote.
Right.
Right, but it wasn't codified in the Constitution.
No.
Now, until in the 15th,
And then after
then they're
the
like,
Civil
okay,
War,
any male,
they had to
regardless
bring-
of.
Everyone.
They have to bring everyone in,
Because they
quote
literally
unquote.
just fought about
So then
that
they
issue.
only brought in black males at this
Right.
point.
Right.
Got
But then
it.
they put in all of the various delightful Jim Crow laws, like you have
Well, I
to
know
pay
all
poll
that.
taxes and all those things. So, like, you can, except you can't.
Right.
So.
Right, but that wasn't codified in the Constitution either.
No,
No.
that was all states' rights.
Right. Because that's the other thing. We're in a republic, and so there's the federal laws, and then there are state laws that can
Dictate
override
both.
certain federal laws.
State laws cannot override federal laws. State laws can define what the federal law supposedly has not given clarity.
Let me reverse it. There are general broad federal laws,
Right.
and then inside of the operation of some of those things, states get to determine how it works.
That's right.
Yeah.
Until there's such a point where the Constitution says that the state is violating
Yes. Yes.
their agreement to uphold the Constitution.
Right. Right.
So I was thinking about this, right? Like recently, I think in Missouri, there's some of the southern states that now abortion will be almost impossible to get, if not
Yes.
literally impossible.
Yes.
And you think about that, and I think about it from an economic perspective only, because I understand there's a woman going through this process that literally only has a defined period of time.
Right.
And she may not be able to travel to Illinois or wherever she wants to travel. So that is a fact.
Right.
But what better way to punish the state to be like, I'm fucking leaving this shithole, and just get up and move.
Right. So
And vote with the dollar bill. And I know that's not easy
Right.
for everybody.
Well, I was gonna say there's actually precedent for that. So all the bathroom bills that got passed, like there's when,
I love it.
when North Carolina passed the bathroom bill, like everybody that was doing business in the state just basically said, okay,
Bye.
you're discriminating against like some of our workers / we can't hire if like we're gonna be headquartered here and people like we need all the talent, so they moved. And then that's when it got overturned. Obviously, like they had to vote on it, but it got overturned.
But I actually love that direction so much. In Texas,
I mean, that was the same thing happened.
do you know the same thing happened in Texas? But
Yeah.
it wasn't passed. But the people that were fighting it were actually the business owners going like, nope,
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
put that shit here.
Because they were like, look,
We're trying to get, at that time, I think they were still trying to get Amazon. They were still trying to get
Right,
all these
right.
companies. They're like, they're going to leave. Like, you think these people are going to come here? You think we're going to get Apple in Austin? No.
and it's like you're infringing on my right or my ability to do business and support like whatever dreams I have. Like you're infringing on my freedom.
And as a
to
business
be
owner, my
person.
rights matter more than anyone's because this is
Yeah.
America.
Well, that's the point that it doesn't though, right? So I don't want to, like personally, I don't live in a state,
Mhm.
and I voted to not live in a state that has an personal income tax.
Right, right.
I'm willing to live in a state that has a property tax. Like
Right.
I vote with my dollars in that sense.
Right.
So I think it's so important to consider that your vote with your dollar to me is your number one vote. It
And
is
then-
way more important than what you do every 2 to 4 years.
So, but also the economic piece about the abortion bills is going to be follow on because the goal of those bills wasn't even to actually make changes in that state. So there are a lot of the pro-life activists that have been pushing these things.
Anti-choice activists.
Okay, right, anti-choice because it doesn't matter after you're born; they don't care. It's they
The
want
pro-birth,
to
that's the other
they
one.
want
Just
to
use their name that they call themselves. I don't want to be asshole
Nah.
here.
I
Go ahead.
mean,
Let them
okay.
call themselves that. I'm calling them that. Keep on going.
The people that are advocating for the abortion bans don't really care about making it stick inside of those states. I mean, that's a
I know what
bonus.
they're doing this as a
They want to push
Supreme
it.
Court.
Well, they want to push it to the Supreme Court specifically so that then the Supreme Court decision can be voted on again, hopefully overturned. But in the event that it gets overturned, then it would then move to the Congress for Congress to actually decide one way or the other if it should be a law. And that is actually so Roe v. Wade stopped too short.
Well, hold on. But are they really playing that whole scenario out? Are
No,
they,
no, no,
Are
no.
they saying when you say become a law?
Because it
Because
each level wins for them.
Yeah, but when it becomes a law, if you're talking about law, but do you mean amendment or do you mean a law?
Like law, like if the Congress passes an act that says abortion is banned across the United States or
Okay.
abortion is a right that everyone has access to across the United States, then that is a federal law that it will not be overturned from, or it could be overturned by the Supreme Court,
Right.
but most of the time it will not be. Because the Supreme Court, in most cases, unless it violates the Constitution, it defaults to whatever Congress decides. So Roe v. Wade, when they made that decision, the next step should have been then moving it to Congress to actually make it a law that enshrined it, and they didn't. It stopped really short. So that's why we're back doing this again.
Got you. So what you're saying a different way is that what happened in the 70s in the Supreme Court
Mhm.
was just to say, well, based on what we see as the laws available now,
Right.
we are of this opinion. This
Right.
opinion then became precedent for all these actions that happened throughout the cities and states of the
Right,
country.
right.
But there was no federal law to have an argument about.
Right. So
So then the question would be, if a federal law got passed, there would be a challenge in the Supreme Court.
Right.
And would the Supreme Court then be required to look at the precedents of their voting in the prior?
No. They would only be then deciding, does this law violate the Constitution? Not if does this law violate previous things that we've decided on.
Gotcha.
So the reverse of that currently going on is legalization of marijuana. There's a federal statute that says that is illegal, but states have the rights to determine how that is enacted, and so there's legalization that's been happening through the states, but eventually either the Congress has to put a law in place that says this is okay now, and this is not a crime, or the Supreme Court has to determine that that current law violates the rights of the people in the country because most of the people want to be able to transact as they want to with this specific commodity. So that's eventually there will be some decision that has to happen on that for the whole entire country. But that's, I mean, prohibition, same thing. Like they outlawed all alcohol and then they reverse that, and this is just the cycle. It's how we get things done. It just takes much longer than most people want. Because the Civil War is essentially the same thing.
Right.
Like slavery and not slavery was decided state by state basis, and then a bunch of people made decisions in Supreme Court cases about whether or not black people were people or could vote or whatever, and then finally they fought a war about it to then finally pass an amendment to then enshrine it into the Constitution.
Yeah, there's this massive pendulum swing that happens on these issues.
So that's what we're saying.
And we're going through all these issues even now. You know, the next frontier of these issues is going to be what is the rights of a human to have a relationship with an AI machine or a robot?
Yeah, there are some people that really are hardcore going to fight that, and that's interesting because I feel like that is a colossal waste of energy
But they're going to. It's going to be a
figure out
huge thing.
what someone else is supposed to do. But yes, you're right. That is
It's going to be a huge thing. So, like, can a person claim that this robot spouse is their legal spouse?
Right.
to
then get income tax deductions and all that stuff.
And so
And
much.
then
Well, I
the-
mean, if you're
and then-
pro-life, it doesn't have a heartbeat, so I guess it's not really a person, so.
Yeah, there's gonna be all sorts of arguments
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's literally what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And the other one's gonna be like, but I'm madly in love with said robot. Sure, why
Listen,
not?
all I
Why
know
would you
is
not be? I mean, I've seen
Roomba
a few
cleans my
movies.
house. I have strong feelings for Roomba. They're platonic feelings, but they are very real
I
and they're
need a
very
Roomba.
strong. That's true.
I could have a relationship with a vacuum that actually vacuums without me having to do it.
Dyson.
Does it do it on its own?
Oh, Dyson does
Because
not
I
do
don't
it
wanna
on its
have
own. I'm
to touch it.
No, you have children.
I just have to clean
That's
my
what I have my
thingy.
kids
This is
do.
why I have children. They're supposed to vacuum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what their job is. They vacuum. Anyway,
So
that's the
Isn't-
next gonna be a next big issue because there's gonna be some people to say absolutely not.
But isn't
How
that
can you marry a robot?
Isn't that just an expansion of the current fights that people are having around whether or not gay people get to marry
100%.
who
That's
they
what
want?
I've said. This
I
is
was
the
gonna
next
say,
one.
if it takes less time for people to be able to marry a robot than it did for like gay people to get married, I'm like be real mad.
Legitimately.
Like, no
though,
kidding.
No, here's the funny
I
part.
do
Watch
believe
this.
that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Watch this though. 100% of gay people will not support
Robots.
people marrying robots.
I don't think that's
I don't think that. I don't think they're going to care.
far too.
Not 100% though. What I'm saying, there'll be 3%. They're like, that's
Oh.
not. That'll make no sense. Like,
Oh yeah.
but weren't you exactly in this thing? I've seen black people tell hijabi wearing Muslim women to like go back to where they came from.
Yep.
Like, really? You?
Yeah.
You'd say that?
And going to that thing.
I saw a video, straight up. Like, I saw a video.
If you
And this black woman was telling this Arab woman to go back to where she came
Being
from.
a person of color does not somehow remove any prejudice
No, it does
or
not.
racism.
That's the whole point. Is that we always have these prejudices.
But I was also going to say, like, using that same lens, if you look at the progression of people's right to be in whatever relationship they want, it took much longer for black people and white people to be in relationships, to be able to legally be in relationships, than it took for LGBTQ people to get the right to marry whoever they
That's
wanted
true.
to.
Good
Which
point.
means
Yeah.
that the AI conversation and the robots will be much shorter because it's following on to each one of those.
Of course.
Yeah.
These are massive because you go back 2,000 years. Like, and then you go from like the thought processes just take forever.
Yep, and you're talking about breaking down this idea that some set of codes should govern everybody because a bunch of people believe in them. Whereas once you fought that battle all the way through,
That's
and
right.
you've gotten to a bunch of people that finally say, "Well, I don't really care. You do what you want to do."
100%.
You have less resistance.
That's right. Even in the younger conservative groups, they're like,
Mhm.
we don't really care about this. Why are you making this a big deal? But they're 20 years old, and everybody elected in Congress is like 94 years old.
Exactly.
And so we run on a system that who represents us, they have the political clout and they have the money clout and everything, but they don't actually represent what actually is happening in society.
So.
So when Mark Zuckerberg gets in front of Congress,
they ain't fucking anybody. Like, what's their opinion on this? Stop it. Get out of my life.
well, when you get Mark Zuckerberg to go on Congress and the questioning there,
Explain the internet.
you guys should.
Exactly.
You guys, if you have never seen this, you
It's
should watch
amazing.
it. I'm not saying be pro Zuck or anything. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying listen to the questions, and if you know anything about like shit, I mean, if you are agreeing that the question is valid, then wow. But if you understand the question, you're like, holy shit, these are the people running this element of the government. This wasn't like an open forum. This was like around the FTC or some shit.
Task
Right?
force created for people who needed to weigh in on something.
Yeah, show me the file that has. I mean, you were like, oh my god.
Yeah, no. There's a guy that was talking about.
He was asking where the cloud was, right?
He was asking. There was a question where the cloud was. There was a question of what happens when. What happens to Google search results? Oh no, sorry. Can Google spy on people with an iPhone? You know, like can they change the result of iPhone? And the CEO for Google had to be like, "That's a different company. I don't make iPhones. Like I don't make iPhones. I don't make the operating system. I would love to own that company, but then you guys call us a monopoly. Like I can't do anything about that. You have to ask Tim Cook." And he
Tim
was,
Apple.
Tim Apple.
Oh, that's yeah. So, but as an
at
example of what
that.
happens when that imbalance gets adjusted,
Lord.
Ireland now just had a shift where the average age of their politicians is 35 to 55.
Where?
Ireland.
35 to 55.
So the old guard, aged out.
That's smart.
So because the old guard aged out, now they're starting to correct a bunch of the laws that were really, really entrenched in the country because of the fact that the representation
Like everybody having
for
to be named
government
Patrick. Like
is
I'm finally
similar
gone.
to the people that are voting. So they actually just revoked their abortion ban because the people that are actually doing it are like, like our generation doesn't care about that, whereas the previous generation was like, no, Catholicism says X, we do not.
I mean, I'm sympathetic to people's positions. I mean,
Right.
there are some people that are generally evil,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some people that have different opinions than I do.
Right.
These are two totally things. I maybe my being naive, but I would prefer to imagine the vast majority of people aren't evil.
Right.
They have their opinions, and they're very strong opinions, right? So, from the person that's like, well, the Catholic faith told me this, they're literally going to bed and waking up thinking like their
Yes.
eternal damnation or salvation is aligned to this stuff.
Yes.
It's not a thing for me to laugh at and take it lightly. It's just something to be like, cool, that's your story. I don't agree with your story. Me and my Visa, MasterCard are going to go over here instead.
Right.
And I want to leave this area. And I think ideally if we could get into being able to be more mobile, I think we would cause the changes because they'll all be over there.
Right, the shifts
and
will
we'll be
happen.
over here.
Yes.
And that already happened. Like this country founded on people going like, peace, I'm gonna go
moving
across the
west.
ocean.
Yeah. Or I'm going to.
Or hey, I'm here, man. I don't have any right. I don't have any property. I can't afford anything. Boop. I'm gonna get on this covered wagon. I'm gonna go way the fuck out there.
Screw you guys. Me and my cult are gonna go to this new part of the country where nobody will bother us.
I mean,
Right.
if you're in New England and you decide to
Top
go out
compliments.
to New Mexico like on a covered wagon,
Right.
whoa. None of us are doing that. Like I don't know anybody personally that has done that kind of level of extreme craziness where you're like, no, I packed up
And I left.
and I left in my car and I got on a ferry that went from Chile to China and then I drove to Mongolia. Like,
But then at the same time, you are seeing that in a microcosm in certain cases, right? There are people that like will move from like West Texas to San Francisco because
Yep.
they're like, it doesn't matter how expensive that city is. The life that I want to live and
It's over
the
there.
industry I want to be in is over there.
100%. And I
Tired
love
of
that.
everything smelling like cow poop. I want to
But-
see the ocean.
So I would say there's one more factor that I'd say lends itself to a lot of these fights just dying over time. And part of it is, people aging out, but then also there's the two sides. One side is highly invested in making sure that everybody else lines up and agrees with them. And then there's another side that's highly invested in just keeping people away from them so they can do whatever they want, and they're not crossing over, right? You do not see a bunch of people saying Christians need to be outlawed because they do crazy stuff. They're just saying you can go worship in your church, leave me alone. And that just lends itself more naturally to how America was founded, and also how people tend to just want to exist. So it takes so much more energy to then try to get out there and control everybody else and worry about what everybody else is doing, and so it just shrinks that group of people more and more over time.
100%.
So the next 20 years are going to be massively different because people will just stop.
Well, I
doing
would
it.
say on that note, I know the founding fathers were predominantly Christian, if not all Christian. Let's
Yeah.
say that. But it's very interesting that the language they use in the Constitution really didn't codify that into the Constitution,
Right.
in my opinion.
Right.
And part of me
My
wonders,
slight, tiny interpretation of it. Otherwise, the laws would be very strict. There would be, like, for example, Sabbath on Sunday across the country.
But they came from that.
But they came from. That's my point.
well,
So
and
there-
I thought though maybe it wasn't specifically in writing because of like England. Every time you had a new king or like
Mhm.
Catholicism to Anglicanism, back and forth, or Protestants or whatever. Like
Yeah.
so many bloody, long, violent wars constantly.
Because everyone was fighting.
Because there
about
was like
religion.
a national religion, and so like, oh, it's switched now. Guess what? You're not Catholic anymore. I'm like,
So that didn't happen
What?
in England, because once England became Protestant, it just stayed there. But
the
generally
history of
speaking,
it-
you're
no,
exactly
it
right.
did
though.
happen though.
No, but
like,
it didn't
That's
happen.
generally speaking
It
is right.
wasn't that clean though, because the whole reason we got our colonies was because, well, partially because, so England left Catholicism and established the Church of England. But
Right.
then when the Protestants came up, specifically the Puritans, they got kicked out of England, and so they got sent to America.
because
So-
back when like Mary,
Right, but that was a different group.
Right. No, but I'm saying like they were. It was like there was. We don't want to be Catholic. Oh, we don't want to be Anglican. And then one of the reasons why the language was so broad for the Constitution was because
to make sure you could
there's
be
a-
Catholic or Protestant.
there was a few
Woo.
years of people being like, well, if you go to New England, the Puritans run New England, and they'll put you in the stocks for spitting in the street.
Right.
Right. Like they were very strict about stuff, and like if you showed ankles, you were a sinner. And then like people were like,
Or a
okay,
witch.
we've had this experiment, and we're starting to see it develop again. Then as we codify this, let's just leave all that out.
I think the
Yeah.
U.S. Constitution is so marvelous from my tiny perspective of historical documents.
I mean, it's kept this experiment going for what,
But-
on
but-
450 years now.
But not even just here.
Oh yeah.
It was also inspirational for a lot of other people. Right, and if you go back and sit down and imagine what these people's perspective of life was like,
Right.
right? And much more limited in broad scope,
Yeah.
right? Much more limited in broad scope than what we have now.
Yeah.
So there was not even this idea of interstate communication outside of a postal system, which I don't even know.
Well,
Was the
even
postal
that-
system even set up by then? I think it was. I think there was
There was a
carriage.
version. Yeah. There's a
There was
version
something of
it,
that
yeah.
nature. I mean, talking about a very,
Oh, yeah, the
very
post office
tiny
was
perspective of
crazy
what we
thing.
have now. But the bones of it, the skeleton of it is incredible. The limits between where the federal government should stop and when the state government should stop. And I think to me, it's like always go back to the idea that the colonies were there and they were all like these micro countries.
Yeah, they were.
And if actually going to Italy was the first time I actually got to see a city-state
Mm-hmm.
in like reality. So you'd go to Lucca or Florence or Siena, and they actually have walls around the city, like
Mhm.
old, like right.
Yeah, yeah. Because
In Lucca, like you drive through the walls because that's like the city center, and then the city is grown out around it, right?
Right,
But back
right.
then, that was the city. Why would you have walls? Because another city was going to attack you, right?
Yep.
That's why you have a wall around your city.
yeah, and then everyone
Italy
comes
was
in.
really interestingly unique like that because I mean they were all like just every little town was its own
Yeah.
principality
Yeah.
versus
They had their city
a
states.
king, and then
So,
Right,
so,
right.
so,
Yeah.
so that's city states, and then you end up
Yeah.
with the country style, right? Where the
Mhm.
one country owns, and then you had in England you had the king, but the king had the agreements with the barons to provide the army, and all of these kind of things. In the United States, it's this rich hodgepodge of these kind of concepts.
Actually, going for England, one of the reasons, another major reason that they split from Catholicism, aside from Henry and
Getting divorced.
all his divorces and wives, was because the church had actually grabbed all the land from the barons.
he
and
wanted
lords.
property and money back.
Yeah,
Of course,
over
it's
the
always
years,
just the same
yeah.
shit, guys. It's always the same argument. It's
So-
always to figure out how to get
He
your
was in
money.
debt from being in a war, and he was like, who has a lot of money and
Those
won't give me a
guys.
divorce? The Pope.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly how this always works. It is exactly, in my opinion, the foundation of the whole thing, which is in the Roman time, like the way this happened. If you go back, it's the same kind of stories. All of a sudden, the creation of allowed the accumulation of.
which is interesting because, for the abortion discussion, I feel like that's actually one of the reasons why it doesn't have that much steam, because it's very hard to tie an economic incentive to banning abortion.
Okay, let me slow down. Doesn't have what steam?
The argument, the fight, like
The
it's,
fight for abortion bans? or
against it.
Against
well,
it.
for abortion bans, but against abortion like as an activity in the United States. It's really hard to tie an economic incentive to that. So people like will be riled up about it because of their beliefs, but eventually that group just loses more and more steam because it's very hard to tell someone, I need you to sacrifice your livelihood to fight for this thing that in reality may barely affect you.
Hold on. Are you talking about both sides of the equation, or are you talking
No,
about one
No.
specific
I'm
side?
talking
What's
about the side that wants to ban,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
it, 'cause
You're
there's-
fighting for it. Like, no, I really want to make sure I
Oh,
have
no, of
audio
course,
autonomy.
there's
There's a
100%.
I will fight for that
There's a
forever.
massive economic incentive for everyone that's fighting for it.
It's 100%. You're 100% correct. Why? Because they're also now protesting the creation of refugees and,
Yeah.
and world war conflicts and.
Or even just things like our shitty CPS system.
That's
here
what I'm
in
saying.
Texas, Like,
These people are now, you know, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
or state CPS.
The vast majority of them mean super well, and they're very conscious of this unborn child. But the reality is, they're also not. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are not also going and protesting, you know, the CPS or the foster care system or the school system or the fact that kids that can't afford food get a shitty lunch. Like they're
Right.
not protesting all. Those people, you know, like really kudos to them because at least they're all in on their perception of children at any stage, whether embryo to 18, need us all 100% support.
Right.
They're not really doing that.
Right.
The vast majority of them.
Right.
So then they're picking this one particular moment, and like you said, how much do you really want to fight this?
Right. And that's the question. A lot of people, you know, no matter where it goes, a lot of people will start having to make a personal choice of, am I really invested in this? And you see people do that across movements all the time, right? Like there's a lot of people that will be very, very liberal or, you know, like liberal leaning towards socialist early in life because there's a lot less for them to worry about. Like it's very easy to
Like Occupy Wall
champion.
Street, that'll kind of fizzle
Yeah.
out, even though it's like that's like.
It's
kinda
it's easier
fun.
to champion communism when like you're a college kid because you basically live in a commune, right? I mean, it's a commune you pay for, but like it's college, it's a commune, and then
Right.
all of a sudden, like once you start
accumulate
making
some things for
yeah
yourself.
and making money and paying taxes, you're like, wait a minute, if I worked this hard to get over the debt and like figure out how to pay my bills and like actually have a savings, I don't want to give that away.
Right.
So
Well, you know that, I think we talked about this already, but in Florida, they did a little study at a university about sharing GPAs.
yeah, right.
You hear about
Nobody. yeah,
You hear about this?
Yeah, you told us.
yeah. Nobody wants to give away their GPA.
Yeah, they were all about making rich people give away the money, but as
Right.
soon as it was like, so what's your GPA? Well, we have this thing where if you're over 3.5, you can share your GPA. Like, what? No.
To be fair, if I inherited like my parents' GPA and that was the GPA I got to like have all through school without doing any work for it, I guess I'd probably want to defend that a little harder than being able to prove that I'm smart enough to get the GPA.
It's
I
called
got.
legacies.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
if your parents had a decent enough GPA to go to Harvard, you gotta, your foot's already in the door.
That's the
And-
reality.
Yeah,
That's never going to go away.
it isn't.
Your
And-
two brain cells are real lonely because they won't talk to each other. But
When I tell you
got
this,
into Harvard.
Issa yesterday posted, it's the cutest fucking thing. He posted his first Instagram stories.
Okay,
So fucking cute. And he was been bugging his mom like, I want to create YouTube videos.
okay.
And Tangi's like, finally she's like, okay, fine, fuck it. I'll do an Instagram story. I know how to run that, right?
Mhm.
I don't even know how to upload to YouTube and whatever, right? So she just busts out his account.
hmm
It's cuter by the day, by the way. Hits the record button on his video.
Right.
And it records him talking about his seashells. I can never say seashells quickly. So he had got a bunch of these things from heaven, and he had already had some, and he
Mhm.
put it all together. And now he wanted to make a video
About
of him talking about his collection of seashells and what they are. And he talks about this starfish and how this is what happens when it dies and it gets out of the water.
hmm
But he's not even 5 yet.
Right.
The first time I did any legit video to ever go on anything was 2 years ago.
Oh yeah.
As the
yeah.
37-year-old,
Right.
right? So at that time I was, 32-year head jump on me,
hmm
right? Isn't that crazy?
Now think about that in the aspect of like the macroeconomic shift that's happening in this country around the move towards socialism in a lot of cases.
I don't even know why I was
Other
telling
than
that
the
story.
No,
But I
actually,
already
I was going to
have.
say, it actually starts it actually ties pretty well. So Issa is starting video content creation 32 years ahead of you, right? Imagine how many kids are earning money before their parents were.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Same thing happened when the internet first,
Yeah.
became available widely. People started doing things where it was like, their kids are 14, making 30 grand a year because they are the only ones who know how to make websites. All of that makes a shift toward a situation where people are like, we're not okay giving away everything, but we are okay putting more back into the society because we've had it from an earlier age. So it actually grows the philanthropic and the cycling of money back into the country, because it's easier when you've always kind of had this idea that it's going to be around, that you can do things that will produce money. It's much easier to give away, pay a little bit higher in taxes, like all these kind of things that shift us back towards some type of balance. Because right now we're just out of balance, right? Like it's just really easy as anyone that has, you know, the time and effort and means to just not pay taxes. That's just how it's set up.
What do you mean not pay taxes? I pay a fucking
No.
mountain load of taxes. What are you talking about?
Effectively not pay taxes. I'm not saying like you never pay. That's the other lie, right?
No,
That-
so you
that
have
rich
got
people
a
don't
team
pay
of
taxes.
people who know how
Yeah,
the
that's
tax
the
code
other
works
lie,
to
too.
find
Like,
you
no,
every.
It's like you pay the taxes, you just pay them differently.
Yes.
Like the taxes, you know, it's the whole thing of.
I mean, there's inventory tax that I pay for.
there's payroll. There's going to be payroll.
Taxes that
Yeah.
are in the six figures.
Right, all of that stuff happens.
What are you talking about?
all
Not
that,
you, but
right, all that stuff happens, and then what people see is they see that because it doesn't register as personal income tax, and they see someone with $1 billion, they're like,
Yep.
why aren't you paying any taxes? Like, no, those taxes got paid first.
it's not even that though. The reality is that we hear that outside, and I imagine when the doors close, you're like, fuck this guy. They don't even know what they're talking about. So let's sit down and have a conversation.
When the doors close, have you ever seen Larry Kudlow go on TV and talk about the economy?
No.
He
I don't even
basically,
know who that
he's our commerce
Of
secretary.
course. Yeah, that's
He
my
basically
colleague
says,
over
he's just
there.
like, all you poor people just need to shut up.
Is
Like,
he really?
I don't know, I'm sure, but
like the first
Well,
time the tariffs were announced and people were saying like this is going to hurt the American consumer. Oh no, it's the government shutdown. They're like, this federal workers cannot work, and he was like, well, why can't they just take out some short-term loans to cover themselves until we get the government back up?
Oh wow.
Yeah,
say the last part.
he said, why can't people just go borrow some money until the government comes back, like all the federal workers that weren't getting a paycheck.
I don't know about anyone
was-
else, but
it
I
was a
know that
fundamental
typically my
disconnect.
work history is a big part of what the bank cares about before they'll give me money.
Yeah, but because he's
I don't know, man.
he's worth $20-something billion.
But I get it. But at
Yeah.
the same time, I'm like, literally, my paycheck is not guaranteed.
right, but
So I'm in a different beast than they're used to that consistent paycheck, and
but that's what I was saying.
they're
The-
different. It's a different type of scenario.
as the younger generation ages into the working, owning age, they'll do it so much faster that they won't have the perspective of I go collect a paycheck and therefore my taxes are being taken away from me. They're gonna say, well, I did business, I paid taxes, and then like I keep on doing business.
I think everybody thinks that. I don't
No,
know anybody who does.
no,
that.
they don't.
What do
No,
you mean, no?
if you don't own your own business.
No, no, no. I know, but I'm saying the business owners, all business. I'm sorry. let me
Yeah,
rephrase.
yeah, yeah.
All business owners already think that.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Everyone is being pushed to the place where
There's-
they're going to be their own business, which is going to stop this
Well,
conversation.
the reality is, man,
Yeah.
if you're making any money in the United States, you own your business. If you whether you're a doctor, you're an attorney, or
Right.
whatever, you to be a W-2 employee and walk out with in a high six-figure, mid to high six-figure number or above is unheard of.
Yeah,
Very, very unheard
but
of.
that's what we're talking about. So you're right. W-2 employees at a high six-figure is unheard of, right? But we're starting to see that even there's being less W-2 employees in the $50,000 and $60,000 range.
Look, that's awesome. Good. God
It's-
bless
yeah,
them.
it
I'm all
is.
about that. This whole company's founded on supporting people like that.
So that is going to move the whole entire conversation about whether or not rich people need to have their money taken from them, and more to how do we make this country function? Because everyone will then be in the position that the rich people are in. Like our Congress just put that in place. If you have an LLC and you file the correct paperwork, you can get a 20% tax rate.
Really? How did I not know that?
Because you don't keep up with these things.
You don't need to keep up with it.
I don't pay attention.
Just pay Brian, but I'm just saying,
Right.
like that's the thing. Like they enshrine that. It
Yeah.
used to be like, oh well, if you're an S corp, you can get this, or like there was all these carve outs.
Yeah.
And now it's like no, like taxes are they've been plateaued for all businesses.
Yeah, yeah.
So now everyone's like, okay, cool, and you see that like there's a bunch of people that are like, look, as a gig wage worker, if you file your LLC, like you now have created you start the micro corporation piece, and then you can take advantage of all those same rules no matter what the money you're making. So then what it pushes people in the direction of is pushes people in the direction of paying for the services that actually pay into the government coffers, which then expand and it
Yeah.
becomes this virtuous cycle. And kind of going back to the thing that we talked about like 2 years ago, the master apprentice model. Like when the country was founded, when you did work, you were a small business. Very rarely did you go work for someone else. Like you worked on someone else's business, but even inside of that, you were doing a job, like basically you were selling to a bigger corporation. Like if you made chairs, you were selling to a bigger farm, or if like.
So
Right.
that is so interesting you brought that up, because in California they just recently passed a ruling that all the Uber drivers should be treated as employees.
Right, which I think
As
is
employees?
right,
Yeah.
which I think is slightly backwards.
Yeah, I think so too.
But the reason I
I
think,
think what they're doing is they don't really, like, it's always like this. The laws come in or the rulings come in
they're
and
reactive.
they're
always
reactive, and they don't actually they're not gonna be happy with the results of it.
Right. I think it would have been.
Because Uber's gonna be like, hey, immediately, CEO did this. Hey, autonomous driving group, can you
Right.
speed that fucking process up? I'm gonna throw you another $1 billion. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, okay, yes, thank you. Speed that up.
I
And
think
that's the same thing that's happening at McDonald's.
I think it would have been a better move for them to have classified a rule around how Uber should treat their vendors, and that the drivers are vendors.
Well, why don't the vendors get together and form it? There's so many different ways around this, but the reality is that
Yes.
they're just pushing this reactionary shit. It goes back to the thing we just talked about related to abortion or not or whatever.
right.
People are going to find their way to make it happen. People are going to be marrying robots in the next 50 years. It's just
Right.
going to happen.
Right.
If not, it's going to be the 100 years. If not, it's going to be 150 years. But it's going to happen because collectively as a society, people are going to be like, I don't want to fuck with that. Just, cool, let them do their thing, man. Leave them alone, right? Same
Yeah,
thing here.
it's-
Where they go to make it like, no, you company, you must protect these people. And the company's going to be like, well, I don't have to use these people. So I'm going to use robots. Now what are you going to do? Now fuck all you guys. I mean, you could buy a robot to flip burgers at McDonald's for like $33,000.
Yeah.
That's the amount of money that they're paying for minimum wage. And that thing works all day long and has no baby mama or baby daddy issues
Yeah.
ever. It just
Never
shows up.
takes off.
It just shows up. You can call it names, you can kick it, you can grab it on the rear butt, you do whatever you want with it. And companies are gonna be like, I'm just gonna do that.
The other half of that is also, so there's two pressures there. There's a pressure of the people needing to make more money because our economy has expanded, things cost more, right? And then automation making it easier for them to replace people and not hire. On the other side of that, because we have so much more information, more people are cognizant of what they actually buy and what they eat, which then moves them away from companies like McDonald's, which then push pressure on McDonald's ability to operate the way they used to operate and pay people more. So it's like, it's a three-way squeeze on that company, which is really squeezing that company into non-existence. How long it's gonna take, we don't know. But like, companies like McDonald's are part of basically the last century.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting
They're the
is,
dryer sheets of
but
food.
no, I will disagree.
Yeah.
I will only disagree from the perspective of they can innovate if they're willing to keep their ear to the ground and pay attention.
Right.
And they are innovating.
Right.
Actually,
But-
McDonald's stock is up because of the innovations and happening in technology and the new healthy food
But they had to learn that lesson.
the hard way.
And one of the ways that they had to learn that lesson was by them acquiring and then losing Chipotle.
Yes,
And Chipotle used a completely different model
100%.
because they don't have franchises and the other stuff. Like the company owns everything, but that lets them basically rectify the imbalance between the employees because they're currently expanding their offerings as opposed to shrinking the offering. And it's just that happens, right? Like competition comes in, a new wave /
New
people
wave, yeah.
want new things, and then other companies expand and provide that service. And like, there's always someone that says, well, we'll just eat more burgers. And it's like, yeah, but no one wants to pay you for the burgers, and that's called capitalism. Competition makes you have to adjust. If you don't adjust, you die. Like, as a company, you will die. Sears just died and now is trying to be reborn as a new company.
Yeah, and a micro company, by the way.
Yeah.
Like a
very tiny company.
tiny stores that sell just the 20% of things that were driving 80% of the revenue. So you get appliances there, tools, and I think,
Yeah.
I remember what the other thing was, maybe beddings or something.
Sears essentially is like, what's the tool rental guys? Northern Tool?
Something like that.
That's essentially what they've been restricted into.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And this is the company that brought, but the beautiful thing about it is, that is the development of even societies, in a sense. You're seeing that in the form of these certain companies. So this is a company of Sears robots that's, I don't even know, 140
They were
years
the
old or something.
Amazon of the prairie.
They were.
They were 100% the Amazon.
You need to
Yeah.
buy a house? Here you go.
Yeah,
Need
like
buttons?
you
Here
it's
you go.
amazing to go back to that catalog
I
back
forget-
in the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I forget what year they said it was. Their peak was like 1978, I think, where it was like they were the biggest retail operation in the United States, right? Like they were, and Walmart had just cracked the Fortune 500, I think, and so it was like Walmart was like at the bottom and Sears was at the top, and then it took basically 25 years to flip that.
And it'll be faster next time, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
So there's just recent now antitrust discussions
I
rolling
heard about that this
around
morning.
about Google and Amazon, and I'd cite that too. I was like, these guys are doing everything. At what point are they worried that they're going to get hit with one of these antitrust lawsuits? And I'm not even saying it's a valid one or not. I'm not even saying that. But the other side, surely you got companies that are second tier to Amazon, or let's say a Walmart that's pumping some serious money into the lobbying efforts.
Well, I mean,
To whisper around there like, hey, I think they're doing things shitty.
specifically,
Surely that's happening.
Well, I was saying specific Amazon. I don't know if there's a second tier company that's specifically having an issue with Amazon, but I know Apple being part of that discussion is because of Spotify. So Spotify is like, look, we're a music service.
Sure.
We shouldn't pay 40% of our revenue to Apple for people to access the app that we build through the phone, through the device that they buy, right? That's like someone saying, that's like Ford saying, because I built this car, Shell, you have to pay me money whenever someone drives this car to your gas station.
Kind of crazy.
And they're like that's insane. And so Spotify is leading the charge against Apple and the App Store.
I can see it both
part.
ways.
No, I totally, yeah.
I mean,
because-
come on, it's like, dude, it's Apple's phone, it's the App Store. You don't need to be. I buy shit recently,
Right.
which I always think is weird as fuck. By the way, when I buy something that's not on Amazon, I'm like,
Yeah.
what is this process? What it shipping address? I don't know, like you know,
It's
'cause-
weird now, right?
So I bought a knife from James Brand, fucking beautiful. If you haven't checked them out before, they're out of like Seattle or Portland, Oregon. I'm sorry, out of Washington, Oregon. It's called James Brand. Anyways, I looked everywhere. No, you only buy it on their website. I'm like, this is awkward. Okay, fine. Click.
But you know why that is?
No, it's great. I'm just saying it's
No,
great.
but I'm saying like that is part of the antitrust thing. The reason that a lot of brands are opting out of using Amazon is because Amazon currently has there's nothing against them copying what you do and selling it alongside
Yeah, I
your
know, I get
product
it.
at a cheaper price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be on Amazon to begin with. What I'm saying.
Right. So a lot of people are
So you don't have to be-
They're voting with the business and moving away.
Right.
And that's why I think an antitrust lawsuit against Amazon would fail. Currently, as we currently describe things, I think it's going to be really hard for a lot of people to make the case that businesses should be protected from Amazon when the consumers are happy with the product.
It's going to be very, very fascinating.
Versus-
but Spotify became big because they were on the App Store.
Yeah. I mean, because
Let's be fucking
yeah,
real.
because
So they're like,
phones-
and now they're like, well, wait a second. You know, they shouldn't have to. Like, hold on a second, dude. You
But-
got here because of them.
But actually, so the interesting part about that is they became big because they're on the App Store, and the reason that they're having this fight is because Apple decided that they wanted to force them to pay the 40% of revenues because their app is on the App Store, not because you paid for it on the
Oh,
App
that's a
Store.
different story.
So they're like, wait, no, you can't take my revenue. People pay through my website. They don't pay for the app on yours. And they're like, yeah, but we're the supporting platform. They're like, yeah, that doesn't matter. That's where you see that. So that's where I was like Apple would probably lose that versus Amazon. Amazon would probably win their case all day long.
Yeah.
So we're actually, I love the fact that those three companies are coming up at once because there's three totally different issues
That are going to be discussed.
Because Google's is the whole search and how they do search, which has already been litigated in the EU, and so they're just considering if those are valid arguments for the United States. And so if those three things get
Oh my
decided
God.
in some way, that's the new version of the internet and how you do commerce.
Gotcha.
Because our antitrust laws and how we govern things are way outdated.
Well, on that, we got to wrap up. I got a meeting that I'm late to. Again, I did it to myself again. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. This was an awesome conversation. I appreciated it. I enjoyed it. We
Mhm.
didn't really talk about support much,
There's all kinds of levels of support
but
in
but
there.
there was a lot of
There's a
support
lot.
in here. So
Yeah, saying the word doesn't mean we're not talking about it.
so here we are. So thanks for tuning in again. Talk to you guys later. This is
Bye.
Abe Nadimi.
Jannica.
Emily.
Coffee Lord.
Oh man, I didn't use my name right.
What was